in Baselworld, and he said, I've got an interesting watch for you. And the watch is the Simplicity. The story of the watch is quite interesting too, because he said, I finished this watch the day before I came to Baselworld. But I started this project on September 7th, the year before. And interestingly, September 7th, as you know, is my birthday. So the watch and me were born at the same time. So I said, wow, this is fate.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Deployant Show. Right, so this time around we'll do something a little bit more special because our dear Mr. Chong here has done so many collectors interview, but he missed one, which is the one on himself.
Yeah, I can't interview myself, right?
Yes, so fortunately there's me. I'm just kidding. So then today we will be talking about Peter's collecting journey and how it is for him to enter into the world of watches.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go. So, Peter, can you tell us a little bit more by letting us know what are you wearing today?
Oh, what I'm wearing today is a watch that I'm going to talk about again afterwards. This is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso Platinum 2. This is a very simple looking watch. It's in platinum with the grey dial. But when you flip the Reverso over, as you do for Reversos, it actually has a white gold movement with the tourbillon.
That's very interesting. And funny enough, a funny fact is that the whole team of Deployant riders all have Jaeger-LeCoultre.
Yes, and not all have Reversos. Yeah, I think definitely Chester has a Reverso.
Yes.
Robin has a Reverso.
Yep.
You have a Reverso. I have a Reverso. And Frank, I'm not sure whether his is a Reverso, but he definitely has a Jaeger-LeCoultre. In fact, he's a complicated piece. I think he has a minute repeater.
Yeah. So I think that is like one of our uniform, and every rider would have. So that speaks a lot about this brand.
Yeah.
Okay. So
what are you wearing?
I am wearing something to get prepared for our Grand Seiko event. Okay, this is the Grand Seiko SBGW301. It is also something that I spoke about in my the first watch collection, or how to start your watch collection. This is my brother's watch. It's something that I really, really like. I'm falling in love with it. I love the Zaratsu polishing. I love the finishing of the watch. And amazingly, at the entry price level of 6,500, it's not much of a stretch. Yeah.
Okay, let's start with my collecting.
Yes.
What questions do you have?
So, how do you start with your collecting?
Wow, that's an interesting question because it's so long ago. I started always having interest in mechanical watches. I always started have this interest in mechanical watches and in watches in general, or in all mechanical things and all things which are handmade. That's something which interests me a lot. And all the pursuits that I've done in my life have always been about handmade stuff, clothes, watches, which is probably the highest expression of handmade work in the smallest amount of space, with fine cameras and even food, fine dining, wines and things like that, which are made by hand. That's something which has always fascinated me. In school as well. Of course, in school I did not have any interesting watches. I went through secondary school wearing a Citizen, it's mechanical though, watch with a green dial, interestingly. I don't know where that watch is. It's probably broken, thrown away. All throughout university, I kind of like stopped pursuing interest in watches, but pursuing other things. Hopefully, educating the mind. Maybe not. But I was wearing a cheap $15, $10 Casio throughout the ages of university. But I bought my first watch when I started working. Okay. As people do. Mm-hmm. And my first watch, as I spoke of during the How to Buy a First Watch episode, is a Tag Heuer. And in those days, Tag Heuers were aspirational watches. I bought the Tag Heuer 2000. It was quite a watch which is quite desirable in those days, especially among the younger guys. But I don't know what happened to the watch now. I don't have it right now with me. But I was bought for a grand sum of just $400.
Wow, yeah. That's quite cheap.
It's quartz.
Yes. Wow. Quartz, yeah. Okay, and so do you have any idea what happened to the Citizen and the Casio?
Nope. I said I don't know what happened to them. Yeah,
okay.
They're probably broken and thrown away.
So then what's after Tag Heuer?
So after that, I started reviving this interest in mechanical watches again. I started looking at some watches, and the next piece that I bought is a Girard Perregaux, and this is the GP collaboration with Ferrari. And this was in the old days where Gino Macaluso was still in charge of the aesthetics, and it is really a magnificent, really beautiful watch. The aesthetics and the proportions were just right, very, very nice. It's a chronograph. It's got an ETA movement with Dufour module. So you can see that from the side profile. I will show the watch side profile that the chronograph buttons are actually below the crown, because the crown is attached to the ETA movement, but the chronograph is a module below. Yeah, automatic winding. I still have the watch today. It's quite a beautiful watch I bought with my own money at that time. And after that, subsequently to that first watch, started this journey with Lange.
Wow. Okay. So what is your first Lange?
My first Lange is a Lange 1.
Okay.
It's a pink gold Lange 1 with a champagne colored dial. It was, as I understand it, one of the first Lange 1s in pink gold, which was delivered. I bought it in 1996, and the story of how I got to it was quite interesting as well, because my dealer at that time, who was at Sincere Fine Watches, who at that time were the authorized dealer for Lange, they called me up. This chap called Willie, he called me up and said, I got an interesting watch for you, have a look. So I went and have a look, and I've told this story before. And the first time I saw the watch, I thought, what an ugly watch. Because it's not, it's a Lange 1, it's not proportional, it's not balanced. You know, you got a power reserve on one side, you got a huge date on the other side, and then you got the hour minutes on this side. The watch doesn't look balanced. I didn't like it. I thought, oh, what an ugly looking watch. But I turned the watch over, and that's when it struck me. This is a watch is so beautifully finished. I've never seen a watch at that time which was so beautifully finished. And so I kind of liked the back of the watch, but I didn't buy the watch because even though it was quite inexpensive compared to today, it was still a lot of money. I could have bought, for example, instead, for the same price, a Patek 5035, which is an annual calendar. It's the first annual calendar that Patek ever made, actually. I could have bought that for almost the same price. So I didn't buy the watch. I went back, but for the next week, the watch came back and visited me every night when I slept. And you dream about the watch. So I had no choice, really no choice, but the following week to go back and buy the watch. And so I bought the first Lange 1 in pink gold. I was told it's the first Lange 1 in pink gold.
Wow.
Because I actually have a certificate signed by Günter Blümlein and Walter Lange.
Oh. That's
certifying the origin of watch. At that time, my best friend in watch collecting, a chap called Dr. Mycroft Kuhl, he was even luckier because he managed to get Blümlein to assign to him a Lange 1 in stainless steel.
What?
So he got a Lange 1 stainless steel.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And we don't see many of that, right?
They made maybe about 20 pieces. There were no real records, so about approximately 20 pieces. About 4 or 5 pieces were actually delivered through Sincere in Singapore. And I think the bulk, 8 or 9 pieces or 10 pieces were delivered through Cellini in New York. And they were all slightly different. So approximately there should be about 20 to 22 pieces of Lange 1 in stainless steel. Okay. And they remain quite elusive, and when they come up for auction, they are quite expensive. It's quite a lot they sell for quite a lot of money.
Okay, so is that Lange 1 the beginning of you being called Mr. Lange?
The Lange 1 was actually one of the ways in which I got into the ecosystem of Lange 1 and became very close friends with the brand. So just before the Lange 1 actually, or just after the Lange 1 actually, just after, this was 1996 probably, 96, 97, sometime around that time frame. I started looking around, and I was very, very active in this forum called Timezone.com. Some of you old-timers may know this forum. But this forum was mainly very heavily into Rolex, which is right, because it was kind of like, even then, the key watch of the time was heavily into IWC. One of the darlings of Timezone was the IWC Mark 12. I was contributing and talking quite a lot in Timezone.com. And I was doing my research for Lange, and found nothing. So after I bought the watch, I decided to collect as much information as possible. I bought a little booklet, small booklet, which is the only book I could find on Lange, on the history of Lange. and I created a website for Lange & Söhne. For some reason, Günter Blümlein, who is at that time was the CEO of Lange & Söhne, was really instrumental for not only re-establishing and reviving Lange & Söhne, but also for IWC and Jaeger-LeCoultre. We leave the IWC and Jaeger-LeCoultre story maybe for another episode.
Okay.
We'll talk about it then. So remember to ask me.
Yes.
But for Lange, he was instrumental in reviving the brand. In 1994, they released the 4 iconic watches, the Mêrite Tourbillon, the Lange & Söhne Lange 1, the Lange Saxonia, and the Arcade or Arcade, as you may call it. And I bought the first watch in 96. I started the website maybe 97, maybe 98, something around there. He somehow heard about it. Of course, I don't think at that time he surfed the web, but he somehow heard about it and he spoke to Liam Wee, who was at that time managing director of Sincere Fine Watches, and now he's kind of retired, and said, "Who's this guy in Singapore? I like to meet him." And so when he came to Singapore, Liam Wee arranged for a dinner, and I went to meet with Mr. Blümlein, and he said, at that point in time, 98 maybe, he said, we don't have the resources to be able to create, we're a very small company, we don't have resources to be able to create a website, so why don't we support you in your effort to do the website? So it was not an official website, but we had official support. And he introduced me to his assistant at that time, a chap by the name of Dr. Frank Müller, who remains one of my best friends in the industry today. And you have met Frank.
Yes, hi Frank.
And say hi to Frank. And he helped me get a lot of the information and insights into the company about Lange & Söhne. So I did the first interview of Günter Blümlein online ever, because of course he's done interviews before, but they're all printed.
Wow.
The first online interview ever, and I link it below somewhere. It's still on timezone.com, and that is a link below. And it's the first ever, and this was done through my collaboration with Dr. Frank Müller.
Wow. Okay. So after the Lange one, what's next? Right?
So after Lange one, of course, I like any other watch collector. When you are in heat, so to speak, you buy a lot of watches. Yeah, we find that the beginning stage, when you start collecting, you start by buying your first watch, and then after that, maybe when you're really hot, you are buying like 3, 4, 5, maybe up to 10 watches a year, depending on your budget and the amount of disposable income you have.
Yeah.
And I was buying a lot of watches.
Okay.
I was buying Rolexes, of course. I was buying other subsidiary brands. I bought Oris. I bought all these kind of other brands as well. Some of these were important watches we will speak about in another episode probably. But 2 important pieces I want to talk about in my collecting journey, which I have. One is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Reverso in Platinum 2. And the other one is my relationship with Philippe Dufour and the story about the Simplicity. But let's start with the Reverso.
Yes.
The Reverso is also one of the projects which was created by, or started, or revived. The company was revived by Günter Blümlein. But before we get into Jaeger-LeCoultre, Blümlein was also responsible for restarting and reviving IWC. So the first project which he used to revive IWC was a project called the Grand Complication. And this project was very interesting because he then engaged 2 people outside the industry, outside of his company at the time as contractors. And these 2 people were called Dominique Renault and Giulio Papi.
That's the founders of Renault Papi.
That's right. That's how Renault Papi started as kind of a, in a way, you know, in American folklore, you have this term called skunk works. The guys who are given stuff to do which the main company doesn't want to do, and they were the given this project of doing the Grand Complication. And the Grand Complication is a very interesting story as well. When we have time, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
There's a really beautiful book written about it, and from there, the industry they started their work in the industry. And from Renault Papi itself, we have many illustrious watchmakers. We have Robert Grobel, Stephen Fosse, Peter Speak. We have Anthony De Haas. We have the Chronograph brothers, all coming from this really rich, in a way, a working environment which fuel this independent thinking and the start of the independent industry.
Wow.
So that's Günter Blümlein with IWC. He also revived Jaeger-LeCoultre, and he did that. When he did that, he came on board, and this is a story which I told you before.
Yes.
But when he came on board, he said, "Well, I like the Reverso, but you know, we need to put complications in the Reverso. And the engineers and the watchmakers say, oh, boss, it's impossible. The watch is too small. We cannot put complications in the Reverso. Because since the time it existed, since 1935, the Jaeger-LeCoultre has always only been a time-only watch. Because, of course, invented originally to play polo. When you turn it over, it's a metal surface, so when you hit it, it doesn't break the crystal. But he said, no, I want to put a complication on the Reverso. And they said, it's impossible. He said, why? The reason is because the case is too small, boss. He said, then the infamous Günter Blümlein, and if you know him, you may know this look. He pulled his glasses down, looked at them and said, make it bigger. And they did. So they make the case in every dimension, about, I think, 14-15% bigger. And there you have the Grand Taille. And that's the beginning of the Grand Taille. So the case became bigger. And to celebrate the anniversary, at that time, where Jaeger-LeCoultre had for the Reverso, they created 7 or 8 watches with complications based on the Grand Taille. With the first one, which is a Serpentine, which is 70th anniversary for the Reverso. And then there was a tourbillon, there was a mini repeater, there was a geographic, there was a 2-time-zone watch, and so on and so forth. I can't remember the whole range of chronograph.
And things, yeah.
Yes, 7, 8 watches. We can put a link below and to talk about some of these pieces. So he revived these two, and then the third company he turned to look at and to revive was A. Lange & Söhne.
Oh.
So he revived A. Lange & Söhne because he knew at that time that the German reunification was imminent. And they knew it was going to happen.
The fall of the Berlin Wall.
The fall of the Berlin Wall and the reunification of Germany. In fact, they started negotiations just before the fall of the Berlin Wall, and after the fall of the Berlin Wall, where Germany at that time had put together all the watchmaking industry in Glashütte into one company. That company was called Glashütte Uhrenbetrieb. Remember the name of the company? GUB, Glashütte Uhrenbetrieb. He went in and negotiated with the trust manager at that time. It was a transition time to give back the communist-owned companies like GUB to the original owners, or to whoever industry wants to buy it. And he went back and negotiated for the name of A. Lange & Söhne.
Okay.
So they bought A. Lange & Söhne and taken out of GUB. But in order for that to be done, they had this agreement that all the companies currently, or at that time in GUB, would be allowed to claim the historical background back to 1845, where Ferdinand Adolf Lange started the industry.
Okay.
Which is fair as well, because Ferdinand Adolf Lange, although he was the patriarch of the A. Lange & Söhne family, he was also the educator and the start of the industry. He actually built the industry in Glashütte and created the industry as we know it today. So GUB owned all the brand names, and then later on a German industrialist, a West German industrialist called Hans Pfeiffer, came and bought the company, registered all the brand names with the exception of one, which is Maurice Grossman.
Wow.
And Maurice Grossman was re-registered later on, and the story can be told again when we talk about Maurice Grossman, perhaps in another episode.
Okay.
By Christine Hutter, who was at that time working as the salesperson or sales director for A. Lange & Söhne.
Oh.
She registered it in secret, and then she continued her journey. And when she managed to find the money from her family resources and things like that to go back and re-establish the company, and then she re-established it and rebuilt the brand name Maurice Grossman. But all the other names under the Lange & Söhne umbrella, including all the Langes, the famous Langes, but including names like Alfred Hellwig, like Julius Assmann, all belong to GUB. And after Hans Pfeiffer bought GUB, he renamed it Glashütte Original. And that's where you get the name Glashütte Original.
Which is under Swatch Group now, right?
Eventually, Hans Pfeiffer sold Glashütte Original to the Swatch Group. So that it becomes part of the Swatch Group,
I see.
And eventually, A. Lange & Söhne, although at that time was independent, part of this overarching group called LMH, Les Manufactures Horloger, the watch manufacturers, which are part of a giant German company called Mannesmann, was then sold to Richemont, and they became part of the Richemont family. Mr. Günter Blümlein, Nicholas Hayek Sr., as the two icons of the Swiss European watchmaking industry, which changed the course of the industry. Because after the Quartz Revolution, the industry was in tatters and dying, and these two were instrumental in recreating that. If I had to put a third person into this to create a trinity, and that would probably be Jean-Claude Pivet, because he was also critical in reviving not only Blancpain, but also helping Nick Senior in reviving brands like Omega. Yeah.
Interesting.
And now, of course, Jean-Claude is also a legend in the industry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so in this, so Günter Blümlein is actually very instrumental in your watch collection then.
Yes, he was instrumental, and he was a big influence in everybody who met him. Not many people met him. I had the pleasure of meeting him and knowing him quite well, reasonably well, I wouldn't say very well, but he was a very private person, but well enough that I know his philosophies, the way he thinks, and he was always 5 steps away than everybody else. He knew what was going to happen. He was just a great person at that time.
Wow. So
a great leader.
So, and because of him, and because of how he revived Lange and Söhne, which got you into the fever or the heat of
Yes.
Lange and Söhne?
Yes. Subsequently, I bought a few Langes.
Okay.
I bought a Lange Saxonia in platinum, no date, which you have tried, and
for a few months, and I fell totally in love with it. What a beautiful watch, right? With the German silver on the case back, where it's transparent, of course. Then after that, you can see the micro rotor and everything. What a beautiful piece, you know.
there's a story behind it as well. We'll talk about it another day.
Wow. Okay, there's a lot of stories that we need to talk about another day.
Of course. And then I bought a Datograph when it came out.
Okay.
The Datograph came out in 1999 in Basel. I saw it, fell in love with it. I ordered it. It was delivered in 2000. I had one of the early versions, of course, in platinum, black dial. To me, it is the most significant chronograph ever made, full stop. Ever made, full stop. And this is the work of a collaborative work between Günter Blümlein and another almost forgotten hero of the German watchmaking industry, a gentleman by the name of Reinhard Meiss. And together they rebuilt Lange & Söhne. So the Lange design that I originally hated but now loved is a work of Reinhard Meiss and Günter Blümlein, and the Datograph as well.
Wow.
It's a work of Mr. Meiss. Yeah.
Okay, and we understand that you like Lange and Söhne so much that you decided to retire to write a book for them.
Well,
right?
I didn't retire to write a book, but in order to write a book, it requires a lot of time. At that time, I was running an international organization in Asia Pacific. I had the whole of Asia Pacific under my care, and I was traveling like 220 days a year. Really a lot, 220 days. There's no time, of course, to stop to write a book. So I went and told my boss that I want to take a break. But my boss is an academic, so he has a double PhD from Oxford University.
Wow.
And he said, yeah, why not? Take a break. So I took a 1-year sabbatical. During the sabbatical, so before the sabbatical, of course, when I decided to write a book, I approached Jérôme Lambert at that time, who was the head of, who at that time was chairman of Lange & Söhne, because he was in between CEO. Fabian Kroner had already left, but the new CEO, Willem Schmid, who was later appointed by Jérôme, had not arrived yet. So I asked him for permission and support to write the book, and he said yes. But to be clear, the book is completely 100% written by me, photographed by me, published by me, and also funded by me. Well, of course, Lange did provide assistance. They promised to buy a certain number of books, which they then redistributed to some of their collective community. They also funded a trip, in fact 2 trips in the end, for me to do my research in Glashütte. So I stayed in Dresden, Glashütte area for about 6 weeks in the first time, and then 1 or 2 weeks, another 2 trips later to complete the book. They completely sponsored those trips. They paid for my airfare, they paid for my hotel, my expenses, my car, everything during those trips. But other than that, the whole project is funded by me. After I complete the project, they also funded 2 additional trips, one to Japan and one to China, to do the promotion of the book.
Okay.
But of course, these were all linked together with other Lange events as well.
Wow.
And after I finished writing the book, I decided not to go back to work. So I told my boss, and it was fine at the time because the organization was also changing, and I left the organization. I retired after writing the book. By that time, I then focused on my own health, because I was 110 kilograms at that time. It's quite big and fat.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's why I started cycling. So with the cycling, within 1.5 years, I dropped 20 kilograms to a much healthier weight. I'm still not an ideal weight yet for my height, but much better, much better.
Okay.
And then after a couple of years, one of the other collectors approached me and said, why don't you start a website? You know a lot of people in the industry, you have a lot of stories to tell, you know a lot about the watches. Why not you start a website? And that's how Deployant started. We registered in end of the year of 2013 as a company, and we published our first article. The site went live in Basel World 2014.
Oh, wow.
So it's been, 11 years.
Yes, and I think, so moving back to your collection, right? So other than the Lange, which is super instrumental, you have your this current Jaeger-LeCoultre. What other watches that you think that are very, very significant in your collection?
In my collection, the watches that are significant is, the other very significant piece is the Philippe Dufour Simplicity. I made friends with Dufour quite a long time ago, before he gained worldwide fame. But he was already kind of a notorious, famous guy within the close-knit collector community. People already knew about him. Because at that time, he already had created the Grand Sonnerie, the first Grand Sonnerie in the wristwatch ever. And then he had already created the Duality. He was selling Duality, and this is one of the watches I regret not buying, because the Duality was offered to me by Philippe for 85,000 Swiss francs.
What? That's very, very cheap.
Yes, but by that time it was still considered a lot of money, and
Yes, of course,
I didn't
it
buy
still
it.
is now.
I didn't buy it,
Yep.
and I met Philippe maybe a year, maybe 2 years after that, in 2000, I believe, in Basel World, and he said, "I've got an interesting watch for you," and the watch is a Simplicity. The story of the watch is quite interesting too, because he said, I finished this watch the day before I came to Basel World. But I started this project on September 7 the year before. And interestingly, September 7, as you know, is my birthday. So the watch and me were born at the same time. So I said, wow, this is fate. I had to buy this watch. I love the look of the watch. The movement is fantastic. Really, really nothing like it that I've ever seen. We will do an episode on and do a deep dive on the Dufour Simplicity, and also tell you the story about how it was delivered and how it was made. But I said, okay, I like the watch, but it's a little bit too small. Because Philippe is a really traditionalist in the Vallée de Joux tradition. So the watch was 34 mm.
Oh, that's tiny.
It's small for me.
Yeah.
Although it was kind of like a very traditional gentleman's watch in those days. I had, for example, a Patek 1596, which was 32 mm, even smaller.
Is it still with you now?
No, it's one of the watches I sold.
Okay.
Because it was too small. In the young days, you tend to buy and sell things. But now I've not sold a watch for a long time. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway,
so
coming back to this. So I said, I need it bigger. He said, no. Proportions will all be wrong. Not possible. So it took us about maybe a year and a half to convince him that he should make a bigger watch. And finally, he came back to me and said, okay, the biggest I can actually make the watch, I can stretch the case, the movement is 37 millimeters. What do you think? So I managed to talk to a few friends, and we said, okay, we take 4. So me and 3 other friends, we managed to get 4 pieces, and we ordered 4 pieces. We paid the deposit. It's subscription at that time. So we paid a deposit of 30%. I won't tell you the price because it will make people go crazy, because it was, by today's standard, incredibly cheap. But it was not cheap in those days. You were buying a watch from an unknown guy, because Philippe Dufour was relatively unknown. He looked kind of old, and we're not sure. And so we put money in, 30% as down payment, and we waited.
Okay.
2 years.
Wow, this is quite long.
Yeah. In the 2 years, he worked alone. He had no employees. I, at that time, was still working for the company I was talking about just now, and I was traveling a lot. My academic boss was based in Geneva, so I saw him at least 4 times a year.
Wow.
Plus, I go to watch trips at least 2 times a year. So 6 times a year I'm in Geneva, and almost every time I would go up to visit Philippe.
Okay.
And we had wonderful times, so I developed a relationship with him. And I know that during those 2 years where he was making my watch and the other 4 of my friends, he had no employees, so he was working alone. And I'm sure 100% that the watches were made by him. Not completely. He designed the watch. He did the drawings. He then the plates were all CNC made by a supplier within the valley. and then come back to him and he finishes it himself. The plates are actually in German silver, but unlike Lange watches which are left untreated, and therefore for Lange you get this beautiful golden patina.
Yep.
His were actually rhodium plated. So the patina never changed. You get this rhodium silvery finish on top of it. But the finishing is absolutely fantastic. Possibly one of the best ever. But of course, it's not perfect. There are some pieces which are different from other pieces because they are all completely hand done by him.
And can you tell us a little bit more? I understand that your Simplicity has some Easter eggs in it.
Our Simplicity, because we were the 4 special pieces, we were definitely the first 4 in 37 millimeters. So it was definitely the first 4 in 37 millimeters. We also had him kind of customize it a little bit because on the balance cork of our 4 Simplicities, we had the PD logo on it. And he promises that these were the only 4 ever to have a PD logo. And he kept his promise, 100%.
Wow.
Yeah. At that time, he had no idea how many pieces he was going to make. The rough number in his head was 100, but eventually it became 200. And now, as I understand it, he probably has delivered something like 210 or 220 pieces. And now the series continues on with Daniela. And I don't know whether any new watches have been delivered under her. But I know that, for example, the last piece that was created by Dufour was used for the foundation, the Dufour Foundation, the Elizabeth and Philippe Foundation, and it was sold for I think 1 million Swiss francs.
Wow,
yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So after Dufour, what are the instrumental pieces in your collection or that you have purchased?
I wouldn't say it's all downhill for that, but it's hard to beat a Dufour.
Yep.
But there were other pieces. I bought the usual stuff. I bought Rolexes. I bought Jaeger-LeCoultres. I bought watches for my wife, for my mother. In fact, my mother has a Reverso as well.
Oh wow!
My wife has a Reverso, so all of us have Reversos.
Yes.
And my wife has a Lange as well. She has an arcade. We just started buying other things as well.
So you curate things in your collection as well as the loved one around you.
Yes. The collection grew in a way organically. There was no real plan to say, oh, I need to buy this, I need to buy that. It grew organically. I made a lot of friends in watches, collectors, very good friends who have become lifelong friends. People like the late Hans Binden from Zurich, the late Mike Dunn from the US and Canada. I've also made lifelong friends with people like Michael Friedberg, who was formerly Mr. IWC, with James Dowling, Mr. Rolex, and a lot of other people, including the infamous group of 6 in SoCal.
Oh wow, interesting.
Yeah.
So now, what was the last few watches that you have bought?
I kind of stopped collecting watches for a long time, but about 7 years ago, I was offered 2 rather iconic watches, and so I didn't have a choice, but I picked them up. I was offered a Rolex Daytona with a ceramic bezel in Panda dial.
Wow.
Yeah, and
that's a holy grail for a lot of people.
In a way, yes. And within a week, I was also offered a Patek Philippe Nautilus 5711-1A, which we showed in the first episode of the Deployant Show with the blue dial.
Wow, you're just living the dream, isn't it? It's like having 2 of the most iconic watches in the industry that's being offered to you in a week.
Yeah, it's an expensive week though.
Well, I mean, you could well afford it, so
Yes, and on top of that, the watch is actually worth a lot more than what I paid for it. Yeah.
Okay, wow, I'm just gobsmacked, right? So amazing. I wish I could be like you. Okay, so you have told us so many pieces, so many iconic pieces in your collection. Which is your favorite?
It's hard to say a favorite. I do have some pieces which I like more than the others, but I don't really have one favorite watch. I like this Jaeger-LeCoultre, this Reverso, quite a lot. I like my Datograph. I really love the watch. I think it's a fantastic piece of a watch. And those of you who have actually worn or tried on a platinum Datograph knows the feeling of it on the wrist. It's got a very special way in which it balances on the wrist because it's quite a heavy watch. Not too heavy. The double split, for example, is a little bit too heavy. It kind of feels lopsided sometimes. But the Datograph just fits perfectly. At 39 millimeters or the original size, in platinum it's quite heavy. I think it's almost 185 grams.
Wow.
And it just fits nicely and it feels very, very nice on the wrist. Of course, I love my Lange one. It's got this beautiful creamy look that is really, really nice. And I can't help but, of course, also mention the Simplicity. Simplicity is really an iconic watch, not only for me, but for everybody. It's really, really the icon of the industry of high-end watchmaking.
Yes, certainly it is. We saw that at Watches and Wonders. Almost quite a number of people have actually stopped you for the Simplicity.
Yes.
And wow, you know,
it's a rare watch too, yeah?
Yes, but, you know, interestingly, at Watches, at IMWatch, there are quite a number of Simplicities that were being worn, right? Even Oral Bax was wearing his.
Yes, and also one piece for sale.
Oh, was there?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so, but if currently you have to liquidate everything, but have just only one watch, what would it be?
I hope that never comes, but I don't think that, I've never thought about that, so I don't know. I really don't know.
You know, being a collector for so long, you know, and being such a esteemed watch journalist as well, what's the sage advice that you could give to the aspiring watch collectors, you know, who's starting their journey?
I won't say sage advice, but two pieces of advice that I'll give to new collectors. The first one, which you have mentioned in the episode where we talk about buying your first watch, is don't buy beyond your means. Set a budget. I would suggest whatever your budget is, set the budget. Maybe add 20-25% as a buffer. Don't go over that. Don't buy in credit. It's a watch after all. It's not hospital expenses or food on the table, so you can forego it. If you need some time to save up the budget, wait and save the budget. Don't buy in credit. Don't buy from a grey dealer because they don't feed back anything into the industry. They just take the additional profits and do whatever they want. Whereas if you buy from an authorized dealer, no matter what the margins are, the authorized dealer actually gives back to the brand, to build the brand, to spend money on the brand, so that the brand can increase its value over time. So that's one. Don't buy on credit. Buy within your means, and buy something which is suitable for you. The second piece of advice is that I normally advise, and I know it's sometimes difficult in today's environment, but I normally advise that don't buy the first time you see the watch. So see the watch, look at it, play with it, wind the watch if the dealer allows you to in the authorized dealer's showroom. Put it on, think about it, talk about it, discuss it with your significant others, discuss it with the retailer. Spend as long as you like, 1 hour. I think most authorized dealers would not have any problem if you spend an hour in the boutique talking about a watch. Try other pieces, and then don't buy. Go home.
It's a little bit difficult for Rolex and Pateks. You know, once you're allocated a piece, then how do you not do that?
Do that before. You can today you can go and see a Rolex before you allocated the piece. You can see a Patek in most of the boutiques before you allocated the piece. Today, if you want a Cubitus, go down to your authorized dealer. You can probably try it on, put it on, play with it. You can't buy it yet, but yeah, you can get to play with it. Yeah. So I suggest you don't buy it, even if you can, on the first try. Go home, and the watch will. If the watch is meant for you, it will come back to you. Just like my Lange one, right? Yes, it will come back to you. You will dream about it. Go back the next week if you keep dreaming of the same watch, and buy it. But only if you can afford it.
Wow, that's a very, very interesting advice, and what a pleasure to be able to be the one who do your first interview, because nobody has seemed to do it before, right?
No, we have done interviews before. I've done it with this Nana-chan from Japan. We did a video interview as well where we talk about my Simplicity. We've done a few times.
But not on your collection and collecting philosophy, right?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, that was on the we'll link the video here.
Okay, sure. So we'll look forward to more stories from Peter.
Yep.
And we certainly look forward to, I think, a lot more background on Mr. Günter Blümlein.
On the whole industry. I mean, there's a lot of information which is kept stored somewhere in the back of my brain, and we can tease it out, and I can share some of this information with all of you.
Definitely. So we look forward to doing that. Thank you so much, Peter, for doing this with us. Thank you so much.
And with that, I guess we conclude this episode, and I hope to see you again in the next one.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.